Welcome to the Liberty Minute with Jared Hudson. Jared is a former U.S. Navy SEAL sniper and is the founder and current CEO of Covenant Rescue Group. Join in as Jared brings real-world experience and offers a fresh take on the topics that matter most.
Hey guys, my name is Jared Hudson, and I'm bringing you the Liberty Minute. The purpose behind this show is very simple. We need to understand as Americans what our liberty means, and we need to understand what our role is as we the people. We are the ones that guide this nation. We are the leaders of this nation. It's not presidents or governors or senators or congressmen. They're just the people that we elect as our mouthpiece to do the bidding that we require them to do for the proper running of the United States of America. So the Liberty Minute is about us and about our responsibilities and what we're supposed to do. It's going to be topical in nature. It'll be very short. Again, the Liberty Minute is going to be about 15 minutes long at the longest, and each episode is going to be about what you can do as an American, what you can do as somebody in the state of Alabama, where I sit at right now, to make our state better, to make our country better, and ultimately, hopefully, make our world better. My background is I'm a former U.S. Navy SEAL. I have a master's in business. I run a small business. I run a nonprofit. I'm a law enforcement officer. We work anti-human trafficking with a nonprofit. And we go all over the nation training law enforcement agencies how to liberate those who have been taken by evil people. I understand slavery and I understand liberty because I see it regularly in my job. I'm a father, I'm a husband, and those are my most important roles. And one of the things that I want to teach my kids, and one of the things that my wife is teaching my girls, is what it means to be free, what it means to be liberated from the burden of slavery. And we're going to talk about those things. And again, it's about you. It's your responsibility to do this. Finally, I'm a Christian. I believe that Christ and Christ crucified is the most important thing. The eternal is more important than the physical. I always like to wrap up with this because I want this to carry the most weight. If I go out and I die right now, I'm no longer a father, I'm no longer a husband, I'm no longer hosting this show, The Liberty Minute, I'm not a law enforcement officer. All of the things that we do on this earth are gone. But I'm going to meet God in eternity. And Christ is going to either say, "Come in, my good and faithful servant," or "Away from me, I never knew you." And so I believe how we transact with Jesus Christ in this life is the most important thing we do because it's eternal, and it's the only eternal thing that we do. Maximus says in Gladiator, what we do in this life echoes in eternity, and that's almost correct. How we transact with Christ in this life echoes in eternity. And that ties ultimately to liberty. You see, we are slaves to sin and death, but ultimately we can be free in the person of Jesus Christ and what he did. I encourage you to ask God to reveal himself to you, and he will, and it will be in the person of Jesus Christ. And I encourage you to accept what Jesus Christ has done for you and the liberty that comes with that, because once we see that, we're able to understand who we're supposed to be in this physical world, which is very short and is just a shadow of the things to come. Now, that's who I am. That's what this program is going to be about. Now, sometimes it's going to be about current topics. Sometimes it's going to require an interview, or we might talk with somebody specifically about something. Sometimes we're going to cover maybe a book, but the primary focus, again, is on you, the listener, and your specific job as an individual here in the state of Alabama, in the nation, wherever you're listening at, in the world, in your own community, in your sphere of influence, how you can impact your own liberty and the liberty of those around us. You see, slavery is a mindset. Are you enslaved to the things of this world, or are you free from them? I believe that can only happen in the person of Jesus Christ. I believe that we fight against not just flesh and blood, but against spiritual powers. Even if you don't believe that, one thing that you can understand and see is that you oftentimes hold the keys to your own success. God has given them to you. He's put them in your hand, and it's on you to decide whether you're going to be enslaved or whether you're going to be free and liberated from the slavery that exists in this world. So, today, what I would like to cover, I actually wrote a book. There's going to be a link to it. It's called Waging War in the High Places. And I'm going to open up with just the first statement before we transition into what we're going to talk about for the next few moments. The introduction to this book says, once we realize that we're in a war, we see that we have only two options. We can stand and fight or sit and die. Which do you choose? You are in a fight. You're in a spiritual fight according to this book, according to Ephesians chapter 6, and I believe that's true. But you're in a fight whether you realize it or not. You can stand and fight or you can sit and die. There are no sidelines. There's no get in the game. The game is going on and the game is war. And somebody's waging war for you. The question is, are you going to stand and fight or sit and die? So right now, we currently have a lot going on with the U.S. government, with the things that are taking place. We've got war in the Middle East. We've got war in Ukraine and Russia still ongoing. As I sit here today in October of 2024, we've got storms barreling toward Florida. We just had storms or Hurricane Helene take out a big portion of the Southeast. People in North Carolina and South Carolina and Tennessee and Georgia are suffering still from that. Florida is getting ready to get hammered. And one of the things that has stood out is the federal government has completely failed to do what they said that they were ready to do. And that's where we want to get into some of our liberty talk today. Again, very topical. I don't want to go into depth on what's happened with our federal government, but I will use it as some examples. The purpose of liberty, or the definition of liberty, says that it's freedom from oppression and freedom from having to do what another government entity tells you to do. And to read it verbatim, as I open it up here on my phone, we see that the second portion of the definition of liberty is the condition of being free from oppressive restriction or control by the government or another power. In the third one, we see that it's a right to engage in certain actions without the control or interference by a government or other power. And then it tells us that our liberties are protected by the Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, they don't actually give us our liberties. They outline the liberties that we already have, that God has already entitled you to, has entitled everybody to. It's important that we understand when the government gets involved and restrains you from doing certain things, they are removing liberty from you. Now, that's not always a bad thing. When the government restrains me from killing somebody, committing murder because of what the cost will be, I'll go to jail, I'll face, a court of my peers, or a jury of my peers, I'll go through that process. Let's say I'm convicted of murder, I'm going to go to jail for life, or I'm going to be executed. Well, that's an important thing. That's a restriction on my liberties, but I placed that restriction on my liberties because I broke the standard law. So understand that liberty isn't doing what you always want to do. That's one thing that a lot of independent-minded people or libertarian-based people, they think that everybody, just do what you want to do. No, that doesn't work at all. You can't just do what you want to do, because as soon as you enact yourself on somebody else, you're now removing their liberties. So liberty is more than just doing what I want to do. It's important that I understand that I have to do what I want to do within the confines of not harming anyone else. Now, there's a hard line to toe there, because oftentimes we see people saying and doing what they want to do, and they're not harming anybody else, but somebody claims it as being harm. Let's use President Trump, or former President Trump, who's running right now, as an example. People have said forever that the words that he used on January 6th, I say forever, over the last couple of years, the words he used on January the 6th led to violence, and that his words lead to violence. We haven't seen that. As a matter of fact, on January the 6th, he said, hey, protest peacefully at the Capitol. Don't be involved in any violent protests, which, again, that day, the only violence we saw was an unarmed white woman, a veteran, shot by an armed Capitol police officer. But that's beside the fact, beside the point. The fact is that they said that Donald Trump committed violence with his words, yet now 2 times that we know of. One, he was shot at and shot in the ear. And another time, somebody was trying to shoot him on his golf course just about a month ago because they constantly say that Trump is a threat to democracy. Trump is a Nazi. Trump is Hitler. So oftentimes what we see is that the ones who say, your words are ruining my liberty, your words are leading to violence, well, it's actually their words that are leading to it. And so we have to be able to understand the difference between the two. Liberty doesn't mean that I can't say what you're doing is wrong and I don't want my kids to have to partake in it, like the transgender walks that we see. You see all these guys coming out dressed up as chicks dancing in front of kids. That's not liberty. Me saying I don't want my kids to be a part of that or I don't want that happening in school, and them saying, no, you can't say that. This is our right, our freedom. This is liberty. No, it's not liberty because now it's negatively impacting my child. And understanding that liberty only takes place in a moral society, we have to have a moral lodestar, a moral keystone is vitally important. What is the moral keystone? I believe it's God. As a Christian man, I believe it's ultimately God in the person of Jesus Christ. But the government should help us uphold those moral truths. And when we see the government going away from those moral truths, we start to run into a problem. John Locke, who wrote Commentaries on the Laws of England, 1766, and he wrote the Second Treatise of Government. He's probably one of the most quoted scholars in all of American jurisprudence. Maybe William Blackstone would be the most quoted. I don't know. But this is what he says in one of his writings, The Second Treatise of Government. He says, wherever law ends, tyranny begins. If the law be transgressed to another's harm, this is important right here. If we break the law to another's harm, or if somebody else is harmed, we see the law being broken. And we're not talking about your feelings hurt. We're talking about you actually being harmed. What we see going on where I live at right now in Birmingham, Alabama, one of the most violent cities in the nation, even though we don't have the same amount of people that Chicago or LA or San Francisco does, we have more violence per capita than many of those cities. Whenever somebody's a victim to gang violence, to being robbed, to being raped, to being shot like we saw a couple weekends ago, that's when we see the laws being broken. Another suffers harm, the law has been transgressed, and whosoever in authority exceeds the power given him by law, now this is important, and makes use of the force he has under his command to compass that upon the subject. So now let's take it a step further. He's not just talking about bad guys in society. He's talking about the leaders of government who would use their power to usurp the law or to impose certain things on you. This is the removal of liberty, and this is unlawful. To compass that upon the subject, which the law allows not, ceases in that to be a magistrate, and acting without authority may be opposed. So that individual is working and acting when they commit that illegal act or they commit that harmful act against an individual of society. Whether they're in a position of power or position of authority, a president, a governor, a senator, a congressman, a state representative, a sheriff, a prosecutor, they're in that position of authority and they use that position of authority to remove the liberty of somebody else illegally. They cease to be the magistrate. They're not the ones who gives that title or that position its power. It's that position that gives them their title and power. They may be opposed as any other man who by force invades the right of another. That's John Locke. And we see that going on right now. And this is what's scary. I fought for this nation. I love this nation. But right now, talking to buddies who have been working on some of the issues that we've seen with the recent storms, we see back in April 12th of 2024, and this can be found on the Department of Homeland Security website, The Department of Homeland Security announces $300 million in direct funding to communities receiving migrants and $340 million for new competitive awards processes. So, I haven't dug into this too much, but the $300 million in direct funding plus $340 million in a new competitive awards process, that's a total of $640 million based on the way they present it on their website. The Department of Homeland Security has issued to communities who are willing to receive illegal migrants or receive the immigrants that are coming across the border with our open border situation now. We just saw in the news that $750 was offered per household to all the victims of Hurricane Helene. $750 per household. We're talking about a story in working on the project with buddies delivering food, buddies with the Special Operations Command working to get people out of certain areas and rescuing and delivering and trying to do everything that we can as just the American people, good-hearted people, to provide for the folks that have been negatively impacted, and then also preparing to provide for the folks that are going to be negatively impacted with Cat 5 Hurricane Milton, I believe is the name of it, headed toward Tampa, Florida right now. We've got all of that going on. Federal assistance for these victims has been $750 a person. Go all the way back to Hawaii when the fire started. I think it's 2 years ago now. I think they received $750, not per person, I'm sorry, per household. Hurricane Helene exceeds $210 million. FEMA prepares for dual response with Hurricane Milton. That's the one I just discussed, strengthened as it moves toward Gulf Coast of Florida. $640 million was dropped for illegal immigrants by our government, by the current administration. Whether you like them or not, it's irrelevant. You now have a storm that wipes out tax-paying people whose money you took and spent on illegals, now are negatively impacted. People putting their kids in trees. They were finding kids in trees where the parents floated away. They're finding bodies floating in the water. The death toll's already over 2,000. And we can't provide. FEMA has said we do not have the money to provide. They've said this. The impacts that we're seeing up the southeastern seaboard, up the eastern seaboard, all the way to North Carolina, the southern coast, and now with what's going on in the Gulf headed toward Miami. They don't have the money to provide it. We provided $640 million out of the Department of Homeland Security, who runs FEMA, to illegal immigrants. These are the things that John Locke's talking about in the second treatise of government. The purpose of government, the point of government, is to protect the people, especially in our case, who elected the government, because we, the people, are the kings of this nation. We're responsible for our own liberty, and we see people taking up that cloak and being responsible for their neighbors, going out and working for free, donating, sending money. There's tons of organizations trying to do this, and then we see the federal government kneecapping those organizations. I know because I'm talking to buddies on the ground that are personally dealing with it. The government's not just failing to do their job. They're hindering others from being able to do their job. Let's take it here real quick. We're going to do countries by disbursements. We've got Ukraine, $16.2 billion, Ethiopia, $2 billion, Jordan, $1.2 billion, Afghanistan, $1.2 billion. By the way, we pulled out, this is this year, and we pulled out of Afghanistan. So $1.2 billion is going to Afghanistan. That's going to the Taliban, which is a whole other problem. Somalia, $1.1 billion, Yemen, $1.1 billion. We're fighting the Houthis in Yemen right now. That's where a lot of your money in Yemen's going. DR Congo, $982 million. Syria, $894 million. We're looking to squeeze Syria right now with Israel coming in on the southwest border, us with Jordan and northern Iraq on the south and west, or south and east border, the Kurds in the north, and then we've got guys in Aleppo. So right now Syria is being squeezed, yet we're still sending money there. And they're being backed by Russia, I think it's Bashar Assad, who is in Russia with Putin right now. South Sudan, 891 million, and Nigeria, 886 million. All of these 10 that I just read off, that's how much money we're sending out of our tax dollars. And we can't even deal with 210 million currently that our own people are suffering. This is a problem. This is a problem. And it's a problem that we have to levy against our government. And then, when we try to get involved and we try to help, the government limits our ability to help. Now, this is an important cause to take up, and it's for anybody. It's for anybody. Thomas Jefferson says, under the law of nature, all men are born free. Everyone comes into the world with a right to his own person. This is not just for any other nation. This is, or not just for our nation, but for these other nations as well, which includes the liberty of moving and using it at his own will. This is what is called personal liberty because it's necessary for his own sustenance. That's our personal liberty. It's not that somebody owes you something. It's that you have the ability to obtain those things that you need for sustenance. The reducing of a mother to servitude was a violation of the law of nature. Surely then the same law cannot prescribe a continuance of the violation to her issue because she's a mother, and that without end, for it extends to any, it must to every degree extend to the descendants. That's Thomas Jefferson, 1770. We see something similar, and this goes even more in depth. James Otis, 1764. The colonists are by law of nature freeborn, as indeed men are, white or black. No better reason can be given for enslaving those of any color than such as Baron Montesquieu has humorously given as the foundation of that cruel slavery exercised over the poor Ethiopians, which threatens one day to reduce both Europe and America to the ignorance and barbarity of the darkest ages. James Otis, 1764. Now, they were dealing with slavery at that time. Since then, we freed the slaves. Since then, everyone has had the opportunity and the ability and the liberty to obtain their own sustenance, but also the liberty to support and help others in need. I go back to the storms where we have issues with Americans in need, and the American people going out and using their liberties to provide for those who now can't provide for themselves because everything has been wiped out. And then our own government limiting the ability to do that. We do not want to frivolously cast off our government. It does a lot of good things. But we need to be prepared to stand against any government who would restrain us, our proper liberties. And that's not doing what you want to do. Remember, liberty comes with responsibility. Liberty is not legalizing all the drugs. Liberty is not allowing the homeless to overtake a city. Liberty is not doing what you want to do. Liberty is you doing the effective thing to continue society and continue so you can provide for yourself as much as you can. And then, when you're providing for yourself, you can provide to help others. The Declaration of Independence says, prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such a government and to provide new guards for the future of security, or for the future of their security. It's important for us to know and understand that our government has not provided yet a long list of usurpations. Our government has done those exact things that we need it to do, providing us the liberty to go about and do things that we need to do to provide for ourselves, our own sustenance, and for that of others. But as we continue to see these issues arise politically, even when it's a natural disaster, we see the political ideologies involved. When we see the political ideologies get involved with our right to free speech, limiting our ability to worship as we want to worship, forcing churches to execute homosexual marriage vows, to render decisions based on right to life or abortion right issues. These are things that become usurpations that the government should not and cannot be involved in. And it's on us, we the people, to make sure that we vote appropriately for our liberties. And not just vote appropriately for our liberties, hold accountable the people in the positions that are making these things happen so that we don't have to go to war, so that we don't have to fight like our forefathers did, like the founders of this country did. That was the purpose of them coming over here and starting the country that we had. They did not want to go to war, but had to go to war because of what the government was doing to them. It's important for us to do like the Knights did with the Magna Carta, to be willing to stand and fight the tip of the sword pointed at whoever it needs to be pointed at to protect those we love. It's important for us to understand that. But we have to understand that our liberty comes with that responsibility. It starts with us. The final thing is I believe it revolves around prayer. I believe that we can't truly have liberty without first being moral. So I encourage you, if you know the Lord, pray that He changes people's hearts. Pray that He enacts morality. Pray that we have the ability to enact the morality of Christ in our lives. For those of you who don't know the Lord or don't believe what I'm saying when I talk about the spiritual or the scriptural side, the person of Jesus Christ, the least you can do is understand that the principles of Christ are important principles. Love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love something more than yourself, right? Something is greater than you. And then love your neighbor as yourself. Don't elevate your neighbor over you, but at least put them on par with you. We can all agree that these principles hold true. And I believe it's through that, through a moral society, that we will be able to maintain and hold our liberties without having to go to war. Frederick Douglass says that our freedoms are rooted in 3 boxes: the ballot box, the jury box, the ballot box, and the cartridge box. We have our courts. I still believe we have our court systems. We have our elections. I still believe we have our elections if we'll get out and vote. And finally, the cartridge box, and that's the worst. Take it from a guy who's been to war. We do not want our families and our kids going through the horrors of war. Understand that your liberty relies on you. Pray, seek Jesus. He'll find you.